Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Reports emerging today of a huge contract extension for Charles Leclerc at Ferrari that will take him to be the longest contracted driver on the grid, even beyond Verstappen's deal that presently exists at Red Bull. It will also double his salary from 25 to supposedly upwards of $50 million on an annual basis. Is this a good deal for Ferrari, and is it a good deal for Charles Leclerc himself, especially when Ferrari have not won a championship of any sort since going back all the way to 2008? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, there was a bit of drama going on between Ricciardo, who has been spending a fair bit of time with Christian Horner and is very much part of that Red Bull family yet again. You've got to wonder where that might lead over the coming months, shall we say. Ricciardo was also present at the Honda Racing Day that they did basically this morning, and there was this funny clip that was going around of a karting race they did. So I believe the drama here was that, okay, it's all in good fun obviously, but Verstappen apparently overtook Ricciardo off the track, and in order for Ricciardo to get revenge, he absolutely sent it, cut the corner here, and then just spins Verstappen out of the race. I'll just gotta go full screen. You guys probably can't see the whole thing, but what you can probably see is Ricciardo just cutting the corner, spinning Max out of the race, and leaving him there for dead. So, you know, quality entertainment. Verstappen had a few words to say as well for Daniel after this concluded. And you do have to wonder whether these two might well be teammates in the relatively near future. There's been big reports over the last couple of days that there is at least a contract in Daniel's, or clause in Daniel's contract, which allows him to replace Perez at Red Bull and would triple his salary as a result. And we're going to talk about something kind of similar to that in a couple of minutes' time. Verstappen also during this whole thing talked about the potential of, racing Le Mans with Alonso. Alonso has said that he want to do it again if he could do it with Max. We know they're kind of good buddies, and I'm sure that after Alonso retires, he kind of wants to do Le Mans again, whenever that might potentially be. Verstappen has said, I'm quite a heavy driver, so I'd need to find a light driver or lighter teammates to compensate. Fernando is quite light, I just need to find another one. So, maybe that could be Lando. That would be very interesting. Could you imagine, like, if, I don't think Hamilton would do it in the near future, but, a world in which, like, Lewis, Max, and Fernando all in Le Mans, that would be exciting. Could be anyone, they could get Alex Palou or, plenty of other drivers, but Verstappen has made it quite clear that he has at least been speaking with Alonso about doing it. It feels like it's inevitable that they will drive it together at some point. When that might be is a question, but to be fair, the way that Max is currently going, he could happily just take a couple of races off if he wanted to go do Le Mans and still win the championship, no problem at all. There's also been some interesting comments made about Max from, the Ferrari side of Fred Vasseur. There's been lots of talk about if Verstappen is challenged, will he respond well to that pressure or poorly to that pressure? And it's always a talking point that happens when a driver is in a dominant car at the front of the field. They drive away, they have an easy time, they don't get into too many impacts or collisions because they're usually not fighting in the midfield. A driver that, is in a midfield car, they're going to naturally get into more instance because they're trying to do more overtakes and everything like that. So Verstappen the last couple of years, especially because he's had the pace advantage, even when he has had to fight back through the fields, has, been mostly at ease. And he hasn't, I would say, been under pressure at really any time since the end of 2021. Now, you can look at Bahrain 2022 when it was right at the start of the season, level pegging. They were, Leclerc and Verstappen were going toe-to-toe in Bahrain, and Leclerc eventually got the better of Max in that fight. Verstappen went in deep one too many times, and I wouldn't say he was under massive pressure at that point, but it's always been a talking point that, at the end of 2021, races such as Jeddah, and even like Abu Dhabi, obviously people talk about the end of Abu Dhabi, but before, let's say, qualifying Abu Dhabi, when Max, I think he locked up, didn't he, on that set of mediums they were going to use for the start of the race, so they had to use a set of softs instead, and then Hamilton still got him off the line. There was lots of talk that Verstappen was feeling the pressure, and I think that's totally justified based on his performances at the end of 2021. Now, he got the championship in the end, and it feels to have very much settled him down, and generally seems more composed, but when we see Verstappen against some adversity, either in races or in qualifying, Verstappen's still very animated on the radio, and, let's not forget this first lap instance at Vegas with Charles Leclerc, where they both went off the track, and it was still pretty controversial. I'm not saying Verstappen was under massive pressure in this circumstance, but the theory of Fred Vasseur is that as and when he is under pressure, he will still be vulnerable and will make mistakes as a result. Christian Horner would say that now he's got his championship under his belt, then, he's not going to respond to the pressure in the same way that he did, let's say, back in 2021, and that is probably valid to some degree, but I think naturally, whenever you're in a title fight, let's say you get to round 19 and there's actually a championship to be fought for and a championship to be won, the pressure is going to tell inevitably on any driver in that fight, quite probably including Verstappen. So Vasseur says that, look, he's had a mega season, Max. He was fighting with Checo at the start, didn't make a mistake all year. Okay, when he struggled in quali, generally, that's not been his fault. But he says that, look, there was no doubt that he was dominating, but when he was under more pressure, that's when he's gettable. That's when he can make mistakes. He will do more mistakes when he's under pressure, and that's the case for everybody. No one was able to put him under pressure except us at the last 2 or 3 events, and even except Carlos in Singapore, but that wasn't really, Ferrari, I wouldn't say, put pressure on Red Bull. It was more that Red Bull kind of just messed up themselves, and that's where he started to do some mistakes. So perhaps Red Bull did some mistakes in terms of setup. We're too far away to put pressure on them. So I think that's fair analysis on both sides and a reasonable take from Vasseur. But the point is that when Verstappen is under pressure, and he will be eventually, it might not be next year, it might not be the year after, but he's not going to canter to the next 10 world championships in a row. And I guess as and when that happens, we shall see if a driver can, put Verstappen under pressure, and how Verstappen responds to that pressure that we haven't really seen for the last couple of seasons. One driver that might be able to do that, of course, is Charles Leclerc at Ferrari, and we believe that this will now be a long-term partnership for a very long time, which is surprising even to myself, who expected a contract extension. Now, John Elkann, president over there, has said Leclerc and Sainz are certainly staying at Ferrari. Now, of course, they are driving there for the upcoming year. The question is, how long will that continue into the future? Vasseur as well has been very clear, and I think that ever since Vasseur joins, his relationship with Leclerc prior to joining Ferrari made it very clear that Vasseur was going to choose Leclerc as his number one guy. And Vasseur has made this very clear multiple times. You might not always see this from Ferrari's strategy. There has definitely been occasions over the last couple of years, and even since Vasseur's been in charge, on Charles Leclerc's, strategy maybe being sacrificed for the betterment of Carlos Sainz and for the team. But I think over time we will continue to see that Leclerc is positioned as the number one driver at Ferrari. And since Japan, when they got the new floor upgrade and Leclerc was much happier with the car, could drive in the way that he wanted. He destroyed Sainz in qualifying over those for the last few rounds, and frankly destroyed him in the race as well. Sainz had a great stint, really, capped off by Singapore, but outside of that, Leclerc has been the stronger driver. And Vasseur says, basically just calls him the leader. I think he said this, was it Vegas, where he said, look, we need the ambition in the team to have a leader like Charles is pulling us along at the moment. It does us good. So then it raised the question, what's going to happen with Leclerc? Is he going to re-sign a deal beyond 2024? Because that's, the big year. This upcoming silly season is probably going to be very interesting indeed. Loads of drivers' contracts are at an end after 2024, including Leclerc and Sainz. Rumour has it, though, Leclerc is going to get offered a contract, a significantly longer contract, even than Sainz. Sainz wants a 2-year deal. Ferrari prefers a 1-year extension. Now, there was rumours going around that they actually aren't so keen on Sainz. Well, okay, they're like Sainz, and Sainz is a very solid driver, and there's probably no big reason to replace him. But, I think there's other ones that they might prefer, or at least consider over Sainz, let's say an Albon or something like that. But there's rumours that Santander, Sainz's chief sponsor, is saying, look, keep him around type thing. So Ferrari are probably looking at a 1-year extension, which would take him to, the end of 2025, shall we say. But Sainz is maybe looking for a 2-year deal, but Ferrari aren't so convinced. So it's quite clear that from all sides, Leclerc is their priority, Leclerc is their target guy, and I think for good reason, right? I mean, the talent Leclerc has, what he is able to do in qualifying, a very, at times, extravagant driving style, which can go over the line. But it's quite clear that in the same way that Hamilton and Mercedes and Verstappen and Red Bull are able to create these partnerships and understandings over multiple years, Ferrari and Leclerc are looking to further cement and achieve that. And the rumour has it that his deal is going to go until at least 2026, potentially even longer. And then there were reports coming out of Gazzetta today. So again, it's Italian press, take it as you will, bit of a grain of salt. And they say that the official announcement is imminent, but there's other people saying, well, pen hasn't actually been put to paper yet, it's just a matter of time, however. And Gazzetta says that his extension is going to go for another 5 years, which would take him until the end of 2029. Carlos would like to renew for 2 years, Ferrari only want a 1-year deal, and continue to monitor other opportunities such as Norris's deal, which ends with McLaren in 2025. But apparently a very clear intended commitment from Ferrari to stick with Leclerc as their effectively number one driver. And I think it's quite clear that's the way it's being interpreted. This is the piece actually from Gazzetta, and we can see, I showed it to you in the intro, but it's kind of funny, right? I mean, the crowd on Charles' head, we know what they talk about and how highly they rate Charles, of course, in Italy. And I mean, look, the translation of this is nothing significantly more than we have already seen. I did kind of run it through a Google Translate thing just so you guys can read it and read in between the lines, I guess, here on the right-hand side somewhere on exactly the future of Charles Leclerc and Ferrari. But this is interesting. From Ferrari's side, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Leclerc's been around a while, one of the most talented drivers on the grid. You couldn't get anyone better than Leclerc if you tried really right now out of the options. We know that they've talked to Hamilton and stuff, but that was never realistically going to go anywhere, it seems. He's obviously staying at Mercedes until his career is over, more than likely Lewis Hamilton. So Leclerc's got to be their guy. They want to keep him around. For Charles, it's an interesting question because where are the options over the coming years? We know Ferrari do Ferrari things, and they've had their operational issues, they've had their strategic issues, and we know that Leclerc has been frustrated about that. He's made it very clear, and at times he's felt like he needs to call his own strategy. Let's say Monaco 2022 was a prime example, Silverstone 2022 was another prime example, and the car failures he had, even right at the start of this season, when his energy store broke in Bahrain, and that ruined his race, and obviously DNF'd from that race. Then he had to take a penalty going forwards, and that really cost them P2 in the constructors at the end of the season. But when Leclerc is on, he's very much on. Yes, he has moments like Miami where he puts it in the wall when he's just over the limit, but more often than not, Leclerc is putting in mega performances. And even his Q2 lap in Las Vegas that was half a second quicker than anybody else managed, he said was basically the best lap he's ever done in his Formula 1 career. So Leclerc's on top of his game, seems to, especially since Japan with the floor upgrades, really understand how to get the best out of this Ferrari. And sure, the performance wasn't quite there compared to Max of the car, but Leclerc was beating him more often than not for pole position at the end of the season and was still being very competitive with him during the Grand Prix. I wonder what would have happened in Brazil if his car hadn't failed there and he didn't get to start the race. So if you're Leclerc, you've got to think that your luck has got to turn around eventually. Leclerc said it after Brazil, didn't he? Like, why always me? Why am I so unlucky? Part of the reason why is because you've chosen in some respect to drive for Ferrari, and that's kind of what happens. You're going to suffer instances like this. But on the other side, what better option for Leclerc than Ferrari? Unless you want to wait for Hamilton to retire, which is, it's going to happen at some point. There will be a seat available at Mercedes in, the distant future. Who knows how long that's going to be. That could be where Leclerc could or should end up. Red Bull is always an interesting one. We talk about this with Norris, the possibility of joining Red Bull alongside Verstappen. I don't think that's particularly attractive. At the same time, if you do feel like, you've got what it takes to be a world champion, you kind of want to accept the challenge. But we've heard Albon and Gasly and many others say that Max's driving style is just very unique. And sure, maybe Leclerc is talented enough to adapt to that. But the way that car has been designed, the way that Newey designs his cars, the amount of front end that Verstappen has, the ability that he has to control the rear and stuff like this, in the same way that if Verstappen stepped into, Hamilton's W11 from 2020 or something that is set up for Hamilton over multiple years, and Hamilton is, I wouldn't exactly say that it's designed for him, but it's like Hamilton's at the team for many years. He gets to influence the development direction in such a way so the car fits his style very nicely, in the same way that Verstappen has done at Red Bull. So I think both of them would struggle to match the other if they were to go to, the other team and drive a car that has been, set up in a different way. And potentially same story with Leclerc if he was to go to Red Bull, right? Sure, he might be a master in qualifying, but would he be able to extract the same performance in that car that, Verstappen would? And you tend to see that dominant, at least world championship winning drivers, and potentially dominant ones at that, if they win for multiple years, have that connection. They're the number one driver at potentially the number one team, and they make use of that collaboration over multiple seasons. So I guess Leclerc is thinking, and probably wisely so, that to join Red Bull or to join Mercedes, at least in the immediate future, does not give him the best chance of winning, rather than to stick with Ferrari. All the benefits that come with driving for Ferrari, and the majesty of it, I suppose, and obviously the Italian press going bonkers and all this type of stuff, and the intention to actually win for Ferrari and to take them back to the top is certainly a driving force here for Leclerc. Can they achieve that over the next several years? I mean, look, 2017, 2018, 2019, when Leclerc was coming into the team and won the couple of races, Monza and Spa, of course, very famously. But even the previous couple of seasons before that, they were competitive with Mercedes. They mixed it up. And of course, 2022, they had a chance, but, reliability operationally, and Red Bull developed better than Ferrari over the course of that season. But in the last 6-7 years, Ferrari have been there in with a chance on a good couple of occasions. They've not come out on top in a constructors since way back in 2008, and in a drivers, you've got to look all the way back to 2007 when Kimi Raikkonen won for Ferrari at the time. But this would take Leclerc until 2029. Verstappen's deal is up in 2028 at Red Bull, at which point who knows what he's going to do. Leclerc would be 32 in 2029 when his deal will potentially be at an end if these rumours are true. But, that's a deal to such an extent that he ain't going anywhere for a long time. So, he must be convinced that Ferrari can give him the car and that Vasseur is, committed to him being the spearhead of that project. And if they can achieve that, if they can do that, especially from, 2026 and beyond, then Leclerc is potentially very well positioned. But, it does remind me of what... wasn't it Vettel wrote on his helmet and was like, don't waste your talent or whatever exactly you said, something like that. All right, here you go. I just found out real quick. To Charles, you're the most talented driver I came across in 15 years of F1. Don't waste it, is basically what he said. So, this is the message from Seb to say, well, Charles, be careful about where you spend the rest of your career type thing. And a lot of people would say, given the recent history and tenure of Ferrari, that staying there is not necessarily the wisest choice. But all things considered, I think this is, a good option for both parties. But whether I would sign a deal if I'm Leclerc up to 2029, not really knowing how things are going to go in the 2026 set of regulations, that would somewhat concern me, right? Like, if I'm Leclerc, I'm happy to sign a deal until 26, maybe 27. But to 29 feels like a bit of a stretch in case Ferrari... don't nail the next set of regulations. And if that's true, you don't want to be a guy as talented as Charles Leclerc and be 32 at the end of your Ferrari deal and you've still not, won a world championship, which of course is the goal. Of course, they also reported that it would take his contract to about $50 million a year, maybe 50 million euros. I don't know, something in that ballpark anyway. These are all kind of rumored. We don't really know. Verstappen apparently is on 70 mil. Hamilton on apparently 55 mil. Then Alonso, Perez, Leclerc apparently, 20-ish. We don't really know if these numbers are true, obviously, and Piastri does pretty well, to be fair, given he's a rookie at McLaren. But, so Leclerc maybe is going to be in the big ballpark, and it makes sense for them to want to keep him around. So, very much interested your perspective on this in the comment section below. Just one thing to mention, obviously the new Formula 1 season is quite a way away, but they've already confirmed, Pirelli, what the tyre compounds are going to be for the opening races. So they'll be running the highest possible compounds for Bahrain, the medium set for Saudi Arabia, and actually last year it was, I think, the C2, C3, C4 for Australia. This time it's going to be a step softer. So presumably we had quite a lot of action in Australia this season, but that's going to lean it towards a two-stop, I imagine. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.